Hi again, this is Jay Shepard. Welcome to my videos for the Arkansas All-Region Jazz Junior High guitar. Today we'll be looking at the Swing Etude in set number 2. But before we jump into the music, let's take a look at some helpful chord shapes that you're going to need to know and some other concepts. As I'm sure you heard in the intro sequence, I was actually playing along to a recorded track of the melody, or the head of the tune, that the other instruments have besides the guitar. And the guitar just plays rhythm in the junior high set, no lead. So it's very important that the player can get to listen to the melody while they practice playing the rhythm accompaniment. Another idea that I got from that is an upcoming video that will cover some improvisational techniques and ideas, and it will use the swing etude as a basis for doing that, and we'll also look at a blues etude for that as well. But without further ado, let's look at some chord shapes. As I introduce these chord shapes, what you'll want to do is identify the root note of every chord shape. The root note is not always the lowest note in each chord shape. Sometimes these chords are in different inversions, and the root note will either be in the middle of the chord or on the top of the chord, and sometimes at the bottom of the chord. So let's look at 3 inversions of a minor triad first. Let's look at a few things that maybe less experienced guitarists will notice right away through the first 8 measures or so. First thing they'll see is that I'm block chording with the right hand. That means I'm playing with my right hand fingers, and I'm not playing with a pick. I'm playing with the fingers so all the notes can come out right at the same time. Also, when you're dealing with 3, 4, 5 note chords, or really just 3 and 4 note chords, it's really nice to be able to block chord because you get a choice to whether you can roll through them, one finger at a time, or block them all at the same time. The block sound has a real clean, accurate sound, and it can be very rhythmic if used correctly. Another concept that the player might see right off the bat is that the 7 flat 9 chord is actually a diminished chord without the root. So how do you figure that? Well, what you do is, for some larger jazz chords, what you can do is substitute more common or more familiar chords as synonyms. So, for instance, if you ever see a 7 flat 9 chord, what you can do is you can use the diminished seventh chord starting on the third, the fifth, or the 7, or the flat 9 of the original 7 flat 9 chord. So as an example, in this piece we have a G7 flat 9 chord. The third of the G7 flat 9 chord is a B. So we could play a B diminished seventh chord and it would be the same notes. If we played off the fifth of the G, the D, we could play a D diminished seventh chord and come out right too. Or we could go up to the seventh of the G and play an F diminished seventh chord, or to the flat 9 of the G, which is an A flat, and play a diminished seventh chord. All four of those options will yield the exact same notes, believe it or not, because the diminished seventh chord is what you call a symmetrical construction. The reason it's symmetrical is because a diminished seventh chord is made up of nothing but minor thirds. Since there are only 12 half steps in music, you get 4 minor thirds that are all 3 half steps apart from each other. By the time you go 4 notes away, you come back full circle, and you have everything that's 3 half steps apart. So once you move it, this chord shape 3 half steps away, you essentially have the same notes but in a different order. So try this first 8 measures and see if you can see what I'm talking about. Now that you've seen the first 8 measures fast and slow, you may have noticed a couple more things. Notice that when I'm playing with my fingers, if I have a 4-note chord with 4 notes, the thumb plays the bottom note, the index finger plays the middle note, the middle finger plays the next note, and then the ring finger plays the highest note. If I just have a 3-note chord, just the thumb, the index finger, and the middle finger play. So you either have this kind of thing going on or this kind of thing going on. Another thing is, as I'm starting each example with 1, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 articulated on the strings. You should try this too, especially if you've never ever tried to play fingerstyle with your right hand. It'll help you develop the coordination to play all the notes at the same time and get them coming out very percussive and confident. So go ahead and incorporate that into your practice. Another thing you may have noticed about the right hand is that sometimes I plant the fingers on the strings that I'm about to play before I play them. This can give a nice muted and rhythmic feel to what you're trying to do. So on some of the beats that the notes, right before the note changes, I'll plant on my fingers and kind of stop the note, and it'll give it kind of a more rhythmic appeal. Another thing it gives you is a more accurate right hand because you get to set up the chord that you're about to play before you play it. This is kind of an advanced concept, but if you get it down, it can make it a real addition to the musicality of your rhythm playing and make you fit more in the pocket with your rhythm section. So give it a shot. Another observation you may have by now is some of the symbols on the tablature and the notation that may be unfamiliar, such as the numbers by the notes, and that would be the numbers in the on the top stave, which is actually the written notation. And of course, the numbers in the tablature are the fret that you play and the string that you play on. But above, in the standard notation, those numbers are actually left-hand fingerings. So if you see 1, it's your index finger, 2 is your middle finger, 3 is your third finger, and 4 is your pinky. These fingerings will be very helpful if you're having trouble changing the chords. What I try to do is try to find common notes in between adjacent chords, and I try to play them with the same finger. That way you kind of have a guide finger or a reference to help you feel around the fretboard. So for instance, in between this C7, C minor 7 that you may have played like this with your bar and a second finger, I play with my bar and a fourth finger. That way when I go down to this G7 flat 9 or B diminished, my pinky is still on the B string. It's never moved. So you have a real smooth motion change between the two notes, or the two chords. So pay attention to the left-hand fingerings, and also if you see a B with a Roman numeral by it, it means a bar. That means your first finger is going to play several notes on one fret, and it'll need to cover the highest note to the lowest note in that chord. Be sure and follow the left-hand fingerings as good as you can, and it will ensure a smooth and consistent performance. Another surprise you may have caught in the last example is how I was substituting minor triads over the half diminished or the minor 7 flat 5 chord, which are the same thing. Minor 7 flat 5 and a half diminished chord are synonymous. They're exactly the same. But sometimes what happens when you have a lot of chords that are rolling along at a real fast pace, sometimes these shapes of the minor 7 flat 5 or the half diminished chord can be kind of hard to grab and change real quickly. This is the case in this etude from measure 20 on to a few more measures, where you have a lot of these half diminished sounds and chords. So what you can do is substitute a minor triad 3 half steps above the root of the minor chord. So for instance, if we have a C sharp half diminished or a C sharp minor 7 flat 5, if we go up 3 half steps, so we have C sharp, D, D sharp, and E. So if we use an E minor triad substituted for the C sharp minor 7 flat 5, it'll get us a sound that is the same notes except for the root of the chord. And in jazz, you don't need to worry so much about playing the root of the chord. It's more of a implied kind of thing mentally in the music, and the bass player plays a lot of the roots, so you don't have to worry about that as much. But as a guitar, you need to be more worried about weaving the other notes with good voice leading and close connection and a good technique. So remember, that's the trick on the minor 7 flat 5. If you don't have time to make the whole shape, which in this case is kind of cumbersome, just substitute a minor triad that is 3/2 steps above the original root of the minor 7 flat 5, and it will always work out. Notice on a lot of the minor 7 chords and some of the more repetitive types of chords in the Etude, I've gone out of the way to change the shapes and the voicings of the chords so they're not as repetitive. This is for several reasons. Number one, it helps keep the listener activated and paying attention to the music. If you hear the same old thing every time you get to it, eventually, even for a non-musician, it becomes dull and boring. The other thing is so that the student studying the video can learn more than one voicing of a particular chord and learn to think about that chord in a broader sense as a collection of notes that is the same, that you can move around the different positions and forms on the guitar. And I believe that is very important for a young guitar player. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments or things you need more help with, feel free to email me at the address below, and I'll be glad to get back to you. I'll also be glad to come assist if you're a band director, give a clinic or some private lessons. If I'm in the area, don't hesitate to contact me about that as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.